Welcome in on this Wednesday, and college football. This weekend of college football is going to be an absolute treat. We have had great weekends thus far, but this weekend is the one we've all been waiting for. And what a day for us. We have got a lot to talk about. We have a big commitment this evening. We're on the lookout for Danny Okoye, four-star edge out the state of Oklahoma. Not only a top 150 player in the nation, not only the number one edge in the state of Oklahoma, but a top 10 player at his position. We need to break down that battle as he had a top three of Texas, Oklahoma, and Tennessee. We also need to talk about the Alabama Crimson Tide taking on Ole Miss this weekend. Can Alabama bounce back? After that, we need to talk about Coach Prime and the Colorado Buffaloes meeting a real team this weekend in the Oregon Ducks. What will that game look like? And if time allows, we're going to preview some of the other big games for this weekend. As y'all hop in, hit in the chat, let me know what y'all are thinking. Steven, thank you for being in here as always, my guy. And as always, if you already know you want some great college football fanware, head over to homefield.com. Use code ATTS15 for 15% off your first order. They have the best vintage fanware in the game. You already know what it is. And as everybody's coming in here saying they're boomers and they're Sooners, I think that's where we need to start. Is a topic that involves the Oklahoma Sooners, and the best way for us to do that is to kick this off talking about a commitment we will see tonight that will involve Danny Okoye picking between the Texas Longhorns, the Tennessee Volunteers, and the Oklahoma Sooners. Now, I've been forthright in this for quite some time. I think Danny Okoye, if you ask me right now where I believe he will go, I believe it's going to be the Oklahoma Sooners. First and foremost, if we look at 24/7 Sports, Steve Wiltfong has a crystal ball prediction inserted in favor of the Oklahoma Sooners. And we've talked about this before. It's not that Steve Wiltfong's crystal ball is it, right? It's not that whenever he inserts a crystal ball, that's the end all be all. It's that whenever he inserts that crystal ball prediction, that's based off of the information he was given then. The fact that this commitment is happening in 12 hours or less than 12 hours, and we have not seen any movement from that crystal ball, probably indicates to me that he feels like that information is still the best. But we also need to be cognizant that the Texas Longhorns and Tennessee, all three programs are pushing real hard at that edge position right now. In fact, if you're asking me my biggest need for Texas in this recruiting class, it would be that edge position, which they have already hit masterfully, getting the number one edge in the nation, depending on where you look. Colin Simmons, pretty much no matter where you look, he's a top 10 player in the nation, even if he's not the number one edge. Universally, he seems to be a top 10 player in the nation, and that ranking is unquestionably deserved. He is a fantastic player. So Texas has already addressed their need. Then they went and got Zina Umazulu. So that's another big win. Oklahoma is sitting here looking at the situation saying, okay, well, Danny Okoye is a guy that's in our state. And just a year ago, we saw the number one edge in our state, the number one player in our state, by Job, leave and go to Michigan State. Now, even though that was a miss for Oklahoma, we have to understand that not all misses are created equal. And when I say miss, we also need to understand that there are several different ways in which that word can be interpreted. I think there's a negative connotation that when you heard miss, it's that the Oklahoma Sooners dropped the ball. That's not at all the case. I say that Oklahoma missed on by Job because they went after him. If any team went after by Job and didn't get him, they missed. However, the question has to be asked, why didn't they get by Job? And it's because he didn't want to stay in the state of Oklahoma. He wanted to see something different. So if there was ever a reason to miss, a reason like that, that's almost impossible to overcome if you're a coaching staff, because that's a core value that's important to by Job, seeing something different. Brent Venables could have came with the best possible pitch, and it still wouldn't have satisfied one of the core values for by Job that was important to him, seeing something different. So it's great that we fast forward a year, and the number one player in the state of Oklahoma is Danny Okoye, an edge that personally I think is underrated, even though he's a top 150 player in the nation, coming in specifically at number 149 per the 24/7 Sports Composite. I still think there's an argument to be made that he's underrated. We need to understand this about Danny Okoye. This is a guy that went and camped in Tuscaloosa in front of Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide coaching staff and blew them away. Now, at this time, Tennessee, Oklahoma, and Texas had all been well into this battle, had all been well established in this recruiting battle. But then here comes Alabama. And Nick Saban and company were reportedly blown away. We've talked about this several times. They watched him camp and knew right then and there, this is a dude. This is a dude we'd be very interested in getting. Now, Alabama didn't make the top 3 list. That being said, I have no doubt Alabama will continue chipping away. But as they're not in the top 3, we're not concerned with the Crimson Tide right now, because every team in the nation should continue chipping away at Danny Okoye. Even if you're in the top 3, even if you're not, even if you don't think you have a shot, you should still be keeping up communication if he is open to it. That's just doing your job. So where do I think he ends up? Well, I think if we look at this, whenever Texas got Umazulu to commit on the heels of Colin Simmons, they probably feel really good about their edge class right now. Now, there's no doubt that the Texas fan base would be over the moon with a class that includes Danny Okoye, Colin Simmons, and Umazulu. That would be unbelievable, and it would be awesome for the Longhorns. But I think right now, Texas fans are content with where they sit. And we've talked about this before. It's not impossible to have a class that includes 3 names such as that. We've seen it done before. And if you're wondering, when have we ever seen a recruiting class that included the number 1 edge in the nation, a blue chip edge in the nation, and another blue chip edge in the nation, all of which ranking as top guys at their position? Well, just a few years ago, the Alabama Crimson Tide brought in Chris Braswell, who was rated as the number 1 edge in the nation, 5-star. They brought in Will Anderson, who was rated as the number 2 edge in the nation, 5-star. And they brought in Drew Sanders, who was rated as a 5-star athlete, though had projected to Alabama at an edge, 3 5-star edges in one class. So it is certainly feasible that Texas could get Okoye, but I think they feel like they're pretty full right now with the edge position, that they feel like they're content with where they sit. We look at Tennessee. They have 5-star edge Jordan Ross from the state of Alabama, who's committed to the Vols, a massive win for Heupel and company. They feel like they still need some edge talent, though they're very happy with where they sit. And the reason why I say they still feel like they need some, it's because edges are a position much like your defensive lineman, much like your offensive lineman. If you have a guy that you think fits into your scheme, go get him. Go get him, add him in, because those guys are a premium right now in college football. Affecting the quarterback is at a premium in college football. And then we look at the Oklahoma Sooners. Oklahoma has done phenomenal work at the interior this cycle. I mean, we're talking about guys such as Nigel Smith. We're talking about guys such as David Stone, just to name a few. But adding in Danny Okoye would be just a sweet, sweet treat to add in to what's already been an exciting class for Oklahoma fans. The biggest need you had has been satisfied in David Stone. But getting into Danny Okoye would be massive, because I truly do believe like he is an underrated prospect. He's got the power where he'll win off of power. He's got speed where he'll win off of speed. And I think the most intriguing thing about a Danny Okoye is it's very obvious that he's still green. And that's a phrase that I bring from the horse industry. For those of you that didn't know, I grew up on a horse ranch training quarter horses with my father and my mom. That was what we did for a business when I was growing up through high school until I moved away to college. If I wasn't at school, if I wasn't playing sports, you could find me on the ranch working. Green says, I am also green. Yes, you are green. What I mean when I say green, this is a phrase we would use whenever we'd be talking about some of the horses. Green as in that's an individual that is uber talented, that it doesn't take a genius to watch Danny Okoye play, point at the field and say, that young man's going to be playing on Sundays. He's different, but he still has so much to learn. There's still so much growth to be had. And personally, those are always the most intriguing prospects. Because you're looking at someone and you're already saying there are qualities right here that we can polish and already make you successful. But I feel like there's still so much more learning to do. Prospects like that, guys, are always so exciting. Whoever gets Danny Okoye, they're going to be getting a diamond, because I truly believe as a top 150 player in the nation, he is underrated. That's saying something. Let's hit some comments before we go on. Yeah, talking about By Job. No doubt. They should reach out to By Job. Okoye was at the Tulsa game. Williams came in, but it was a pretty dominant defensive performance. Yeah, Neo, I was rewatching the Tulsa game, yesterday, and at a certain point I stopped because y'all's offense, and we'll talk about that. There's one thing I'm still looking for Oklahoma to do. Really two things. But yeah, we'll talk about that. Baylor Texas prediction. We'll hit that. I think right now I haven't rewatched the Baylor game coming off of this weekend, Green. I haven't rewatched Texas Wyoming. But I think Texas handles that game. Texas has got to enter a situation right now where they play Texas Longhorns football, whoever they're playing. One of the things we've seen far too often from the Longhorns, and they were able to get out of it versus Wyoming because actually one of the things we wanted to see from Texas this whole year be a second half team. Well, now they are a second half team. And in the fourth quarter, I mean, it's been some of the best, maybe the best work we've seen from Sarkisian as a head coach in terms of fourth quarter play, second half adjustments, where Texas might be a little bit lull in the first half and come out on fire in the second half. But one thing Texas fans have heard, have seen, have noticed far too many times is that the Longhorns play to the level of whoever they're playing. Right? I think that's a fair statement. It's a reason why they'll play Rice, and through much of that game, you're like, okay, is it rust? Which I contend it was rust. I'm not really worried about Rice because that was game one. I think most teams in the nation, unless you just looked awful, unless you couldn't execute your core principles, you've earned a pass from me for game one. Very few teams I watched week one and said, yeah, you're done because you can't even execute your core principles. That wasn't Texas. But I do think there is still something to this notion that Texas plays to the level of their opponent. And at a certain point, you got to establish that this is Texas football and that Texas football will be played no matter who we play. Now, in fairness, Green, I'm not saying this to pile on Texas because I do think that we could be well on our way to seeing that because we've now seen a swing from Texas being such a first half team, for Sark being such a first half coach, to now seeing the second halves have been phenomenal. The fourth quarter adjustments have been really good. So, look, I think that Texas is in a position where they're going to beat Baylor handedly, right? They should beat Baylor handedly. Baylor is all over the place right now. But one of the things we need to see from Texas is establish Texas football. You'll play better opponents. You'll play opponents that are more talented than other opponents. But are you able to be who you want to be in those games? Are you able to at least put down a standard that this is what we want to do and we will be able to do it? If the answer to that question is yes, Texas can reach the next level. And like I said, to be 100% fair, we may be on our way to seeing that because we've now seen Texas do so well in the fourth quarter. And Green, you're not wrong here. Rice has a good win. Wyoming has a good. You're not wrong here. Certainly not. But I also think that there is something to playing to the level of your opponent, and now it's one of those things where we know who Texas can be. This is the second year in a row we've seen them play Alabama in that manner. The same thing when they played Georgia. Now play Alabama every week in terms of your mentality, right? In terms of the mentality you bring into that game, bring that into every game. Texas is a very dangerous team if they do that. Very, very dangerous. And I think we're on the way to seeing that. So I think y'all fairly easily beat Baylor, Green, but I am going to go back and rewatch those games. Hopefully we'll be able to talk about that a little bit more in depth tomorrow. I'm in the process of rewatching a bunch of the games from this past weekend. And yeah, there's a lot. So let's move forward because one of the biggest talking points in college football right now is Colorado, Coach Prime, and when the magic will finally end. Some people can't wait for it to end. And personally, I don't understand that mindset. You're seeing something highly entertaining. You're seeing something that hasn't been done all too many times. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, they had a graphic whenever Colorado was playing Colorado State that there were only 3 or 4 teams that have started off a year 3-0 after going 1-11 the previous year. That's incredible. ladies and gentlemen, one thing we need to understand. I see, Brian. We'll get to that. We'll see. We'll get to that. I'll put a star in this because I did say something about that. We'll get to that. George says it's all about the U. George, hey, I gotta be honest with you, my brother. The U made me eat crow. I picked A&M in that game. Not because I thought A&M would win convincingly versus Miami. Far from it. I thought both teams would be in a position where they're really trying to find themselves, and it might be a sloppy game. And at the end of the day, I just looked at that defensive front for A&M and Miami's offensive line. They've gotten some good work in, no doubt about it, but we know what offensive line is, right? Like, it can take a while to gel. But you have Coach Mirabal, you have Coach Cristobal, those two right there working on an offensive line. Like, that was a mistake, right? That was my first mistake. Underestimating what a good job those two can do in tandem. That was my mistake number one. Mistake number two is something that I've talked about. I let Josh Gaddis and what that offense looked like under Josh Gaddis cloud my judgment as to what Miami could be. There was number two why I was wrong. They played a physical brand of football against A&M now. I mean, they looked physical. They were flying around to the football, and Tyler Van Dyke was on. So, George, by all means, my man, yeah, pump your chest out for the U because they are looking pretty good right now, right? Still see some things I want to see, but hey, compared to where I think a lot of people in college football thought you would be, including myself, hey, I'll always eat crow. One of the reasons why I'll always eat crow, guys, I respect y'all far too much. I respect your intelligence too much. You have the ability to go back and find my streams and see what I've said. So there's no point in shying away from a take I've had if I was wrong. I think it's far better to try and understand where I was wrong so that way I'm not wrong again in the future, which, don't worry, I will be. I'll be wrong plenty of times. That's the nature of this business. But point being, I try and see where I was wrong. And there are a few things that I was just definitely wrong on with the U, George. Hats off to Miami. Hats off to Cristobal. Really excited to see what they do. I've said this multiple times. College football is better when teams like the U are good. Let's hit this right here real quick because then we'll talk about Alabama. What was it you were still waiting to see from OU? Two things, Brian. One, I want to see that running game really get established. Now, Oklahoma hasn't needed it, right? And in fairness, through portions of every game, they have had the running success when they've needed it. But I'm just wanting to see that through a whole game. And when I say I need to see it, it's not a notion of can you do it? It's just, I just need to see it. Sometimes I don't like framing things as like I need to see this because just through this media business, statements such as that have always been framed as negative. And I certainly don't mean it in a negative way. I mean it literally. I just need to see that rushing attack for Oklahoma be the rushing attack I think they can be, right? You still have some good running backs there. Sawchuk is a guy that I think you can get involved in the passing game as you can with Tawee Walker. So the rushing attack is something I need to see. The other thing, your defensive backs are very opportunistic. Like, there were a lot of plays where, I mean, they're just in good position. But zone coverage right now, especially against Tulsa, they were finding a lot of success against that cover 2 zone Oklahoma was running. And not just like one off, consistently finding success against that zone formation. And it was something I noticed because anytime Tulsa was able to dissect that they were in that cover 2 look, I mean, Cordell Williams, he went to the same spot over and over and over and over again. Now, one of those, in fairness, was a beautiful play design where they kind of, and it wasn't, I don't think this was against the cover 2, but it was kind of the same theory of where they attacked because they kept attacking a similar position in Oklahoma's defense over and over again. One of the ones is when they sent the running back in motion and Makari Vickers had his eyes seep back into the backfield a little bit, got a little over aggressive, and the quarterback just put it right over Vickers' head for an easy touchdown. Freshman mistake, completely understandable. But that's kind of what I'm talking about, right? Stuff like that. And I think the Makari Vickers one is probably the worst example I could have pulled, in fairness, Brian, because I think that's far more of an example of a guy who's a playmaker coming out of high school, looking at a situation and overthinking it, right? Trying to make a play and not playing off of scheme, more playing off of, oh, well, I think it's going to go here. And he just got beat. I think that's being a true freshman. But the zone coverage, that's something I'm interested in. I think he missed Jason, and the only reason I say that is because Kanik was running towards. I think Kanik was running towards the running back floating in the flat. So it seemed to me that that was Kanik's man. Now, I could be completely wrong here. I don't have the call. So everything I'm having to go off of is by me stopping the play, matching everything up and being like, okay, the thing that I think makes sense is that this was Kanik's man, but that he and Vickers just weren't on the same page. Those are two new players. That's going to happen. Steven says you could have pulled the Pearson lack of coverage TD. 100%. 100%. That's very fair. But it's that zone. It's that zone that I saw Tulsa attack. And look, those things are, we don't really truly know who Oklahoma is, right? And I feel weird saying that because you can only play the opponents in front of you. So Oklahoma has their schedule and their play, and they're beating the hell out of teams right now. Like they're kicking their teeth in. So you can only play who's in front of you, and you're winning games convincingly. You're winning games exactly as you should. So that's why I've always said I really don't have a whole lot. Anthony, I'll hit those comments here in a bit. I'm sorry about that, my brother. I really don't have a lot that I can go off of with Oklahoma just because I don't quite know who they are just yet. The SMU game, I think, is our best litmus test for who Oklahoma is. SMU is a real opponent. I know some people, maybe it's because I'm from the area. SMU's a solid opponent, right? That's a solid opponent. But right now, the only thing I think we can say about Oklahoma in full certainty is they're beating the teams they're supposed to beat in the exact manner you need to beat them, which is all you can ask right now, right? Beat the teams on your schedule in the way you should beat them. And Oklahoma is doing that. You can't ask for much more. Does that mean we truly know who the Sooners are? No, I don't think we truly know who they are. But Oklahoma is a team that is doing what they should be doing right now. And that's all you can ask. You can ask, hey, we're playing Mercer. Go beat Mercer. We think you should win by 4 touchdowns. Well, OU will go out there and they'll beat Mercer by 5 touchdowns. Okay, well, it's more than we asked. So, listen, when I say I'm still trying to figure out who Oklahoma is, that's not a negative. It's just that we haven't seen them play an opponent that you point to, right? That you point to and you're like, that's the team. Basically, what I mean when I say this is this right here, guys. Let's say that we were all sitting here. We're all around the table and we're debating who's going to go into the college football playoff right now. Oklahoma is beating the crap out of teams. I mean, they're playing exactly like you'd want them to. So there's nothing, absolutely zero, you can take away from their play. But who's the team you'd point to that's the marquee win that you would be like, that's the win that gets OU into the playoffs? It's not their fault they haven't had it. You can only play the teams in front of you. But that's the only reason why I'm saying we're still downloading information about OU. The one thing I think we can safely say, they're a better team than last year. Defense is playing with more confidence. Danny Stutzman is playing like a man possessed. Let's call a spade, right? Let's call a spade. He's playing possessed. He's playing good football. As good a football as anybody in the country. They are. I mean, he is. Danny Stutzman, I can't tell you how impressed I was. So it's going to be great to see Oklahoma get into Big 12 play. You think Cincy has put together enough for us to learn anything? I think you can learn good things from them, but I don't know that they're a team that you really like point towards and prop up. But once again, that's not Oklahoma's fault. right? Like I always think that we need to approach these type of discussions very carefully and understand that it's not OU, like it's not their fault that Cincy might not be the playoff Cincinnati. That's not Oklahoma's fault. Oklahoma can only show up to the stadium and do their job, and they've done that. They've done that. So yeah, man, OU, we know that they're a good team. Right. I think everybody here, even Texas fans, Green, even you, I think would agree. We can all agree they're a good team. How good, we don't quite know yet. We don't quite know. But they at least look like they're playing better than last year, which I think everybody expected. We just don't know yet. Let me find these comments, Anthony. I apologize. I went on a little bit of a rant. Just had let me see if, well, I don't know what this is in reference to, Anthony, because Travis Hunter was taken to the hospital. So he wasn't even in the locker room. So yeah, I'm not sure about that, Anthony, because if you're talking about Colorado State, he was taken to the hospital. Sooner in Texas says Pearson was trying to jump around. And that happens. That happens. Yeah, that happens. I can pull so many clips of DBs trying to make a play and getting beat. And if you're the DB coach, you're probably just like, come on, man. But at the same time, right, it's one of those things where you see defensive backs just swat the ball away, and the DB coach will be like, you should have intercepted that. And then they'll go and try and make the play and intercept the ball, and then they'll get beat, and the DB coach is like, you should have just swatted it. It happens, right? That happens. We all love. I'm going to say Oklahoma and Southern Cal are in the same position right now based on their schedule. You don't really know team is because their opponents in recent weeks. I think that's fair. I think that's very fair, Anthony. Oh, man, agree. Danny Stutzman's playing wild. Wild. He's playing really good. Randy, this is a great comment. I'm going to read this whole thing. This is a fantastic comment. Thank you for adding this in, Randy. Randy Austin says, like you said, we don't know who OU is, but OU is building the foundation to be a really good team over the next few years. I added that in just because I'm OCD. What are we seeing in this infant stage of BV, the vision for defense and offense? 100%. 100% this, Randy. He is building towards something, right? He knew that the move to the SEC is one where you would have to build towards something. And they're doing it. Yeah, that was the SEC. That wasn't Georgia. That wasn't OU. That was Sankey and company. Their stats are super. I don't disagree, Green, but you can also only play who you're supposed to play, right? And it's one of those things where, look, I get it. Rice is better than we think they are. But like Homer and I were saying, right? Because Homer and I talked about this with Rice. Rice is a good team. Like they're better than I think a lot of people thought they were going to be. That's true. But were you able to execute your core principles and do it well? Texas was able to do it, but it took them a while. And that's something that whenever Texas Homer and I talked, he was worried, actually, for Texas going into the Bama game. Because he's like, look, it doesn't matter if we were holding things back for Bama. You're not going to reinvent how to run a halfback dive. Like a halfback dive is a halfback dive. So that's why I never really agreed with, oh, well, Sark was holding back. I think it was just rust. But the reason why I bring that to your attention is because we haven't even seen rust yet from Oklahoma. Now, that being said, quality of opponent matters, and I'm certainly not taking away from that. But I also think right now, for 2023, we can only judge by what we've seen. Now, I don't think I'm certainly not sitting here saying Oklahoma is going to win the college football playoffs, that they're going to win the national championship, because we just haven't seen them play a team that you can point to and say, yes, when they play a top 10 team, they'll be able to do it. But they've beaten teams how they should. That does mean something. That does mean something. I'm still really interested to see who they are. But hey, I do think that it's definitely improving. I think that it's getting there, right? Let's talk about this Alabama. Let's talk about this Alabama Ole Miss game, because whenever this game is coming out, there's always a lot of talk about the times Ole Miss was able to get some good wins over Alabama, and especially whenever Alabama has struggled in the manner that they have this season. So Alabama versus Ole Miss preview and prediction. Well, this game is in Tuscaloosa, which I think really helps the Crimson Tide. There's another thing that I think really helps Alabama. One, they have supreme familiarity with who the defensive coordinator at Ole Miss is. And this is an Ole Miss defense that doesn't exactly have weapons all over the field that you can hang your hat on and feel like, yeah, we're going to just be available year one for Pete Golding. I'm excited to see what Golding does there. But at the same time, I don't think anybody's disenfranchised into believing they're going to be a top 15 defense year one under Pete Golding. And if they are, heads will roll. But there's something Ole Miss has struggled with unbelievably bad through the early portions of this year, and that's a mobile quarterback. I mean, they had Haynes King out there running around, and Haynes King is a mobile guy. We all acknowledge this. If you're from the state of Texas and you keep up with high school football, you probably were aware. You probably were aware of Haynes King coming out of high school. I mean, if you talk to Texas high school coaches, they were high on him. People all over this state were high on him. They thought he was going to be a dude. It just didn't work out. Now, hopefully all that comes together at Georgia Tech. He had a big game against Ole Miss. But it wasn't just relegated to Haynes King. We saw the same thing from Mercer. Now, in that same breath, we must also acknowledge that Ole Miss has a quarterback in Jackson Dart that can run and run well. He is an athletic dude. They also have got a lot of running backs that are very talented. Alabama's rush defense is historically the best part of that team. But this year, if you look up where Alabama's defense ranks, the ranks aren't great. Now, part of that is the fact that the offense has not been able to consistently get it together. Right? The offense has given the defense no help. None. We talked about this after the Texas game, that Alabama just was put in a blender on offense against that Texas defense. Part of that is because Texas's defense has got a lot of really good players. Jahdae Barron is playing like a man possessed. Jalen Ford, very instinctive linebacker. And then you have that front. Very, very talented. But Alabama's defense, they did a good job in that game. I mean, for your offense to be that out of sorts, for you to be in the game in the third quarter against Steve Sarkisian, a five-star quarterback, five-star talent everywhere, and a really good defense, the defense held up there into the bargain, is I think what I'm trying to say here. I'm not contending that they were perfect. I'm not contending that this is a shutout, number one defense in the nation. You can't score on them. I'm saying it's easily a good enough defense to win with. Easily. You can win with that defense. Now, the one thing that the defense will have to do, the one thing that they have not been able to do at a winning level, is generate pressure on a quarterback. That's got to come. They have got to be able to generate pressure on a quarterback. And they have the talent to do so. But that interior has got to get it together. That front seven has got to get it together. Deontay Lawson is playing like a man possessed. He is playing phenomenal football. But that pass rush has got to come together, and especially against Ole Miss. You're going to want to make him uncomfortable. But Alabama's defense has not been the issue. The offense has got to hold up their end of the bargain. And one of the ways you can make sure your defense is put in positions to win, have your offense be put in positions to win. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to turn your attention to that Florida-Tennessee game from this past weekend. And if you haven't had the opportunity to watch it, by all means, please, when you get an opportunity, go watch it. Because Billy Napier had an unbelievable game plan in that football game for the Florida Gators. The way he was able to nullify that pass rush for Tennessee, a pass rush that they were worried about, especially with an offensive line that when they get their hands on you, that being the Florida offensive line, when they get their hands on you, they're pretty good. But they're a little bit like Bama's offensive line right now, where their feet are stuck in cement. They're not playing with a bunch of fast feet. If Bama's offensive lines get their hands on you, cool. But Bama's offensive line is being beat by speed rushes time and time again. Time and time again. And I think a lot of that has to do with bad weight. It is what it is. But the reason why I turn your attention to that Florida-Tennessee game is Billy Napier put together a game plan that was fantastic. And I'm not saying Tommy Rees, go copy that game plan. Tommy Rees, find a game plan that works for your quarterback. But for the love of God, go check out what Billy Napier did. And I'll give you a little bit of a lowdown. They're sitting in a position where they know, okay, Tennessee has got some rushers. They've got the ability to get to the quarterback, and we need to keep Graham Mertz upright. So we are going to quickly attack the edges of this Tennessee defense. We are going to quickly get the ball out. If you're doing a drop back, it's one out. You get what I'm saying? Like as soon as your back foot hits on the last step of your drop back, the ball's got to be out. We're doing screen passes, quick passes. We're spreading this defense out. That's what they did during the first quarter. And then as the game went on, Tennessee's defense was not able to stack the box and say, run down our throat, we dare you. Because Billy Napier gave them something to think about. He made them think. Alabama has got to give this defense something to think about. And once again, I'm not saying go replicate what Billy Napier did. I'm saying look at how an offensive mind formulated a game plan for his team that played to their strengths while taking away the opposing defense's strengths. That was really impressive stuff. I do believe, guys, I'm not being facetious here. If you have an opportunity, do me a favor. Go check out that Florida-Tennessee game. You will have a blast. You will have an absolute blast, I guarantee it. And you'll learn a lot. Alabama has got to play complementary football. This is an Ole Miss team that's quarterback can run the football. They've got several running backs. They've got several wide receivers. Offensively, they're gifted. Very, very gifted. But this is a game Alabama should win. And when I say should, it's because Alabama is a more talented team. And talent doesn't win you games. But they have a recipe that they can use to find victory in this game. It's all about finding that recipe, committing to that recipe. But I will tell you one thing that they cannot do. If Tommy Rees thinks that he's going to be put in a position where he will have Jalen Milroe, drop him back, go 5 wide, and ask Jalen Milroe to read a defense, 1, that might not be his game. 2, you can't keep him upright. The offensive line for Alabama can't pass block long enough, and this is an Ole Miss defense that's generated 10 sacks throughout 3 games. So Alabama, I think, can win this game. I think Alabama has got a very clear path to victory. But I have a question for all of you in the chat. When was the last time this year you saw Tommy Rees roll Jalen Milroe out to his right? Guys, I'm not claiming to be a damn coach. But elementary is elementary. You're having problems with your true freshman left tackle, which is fine. He's a true freshman left tackle. Learning the fire. He's not the first true freshman offensive lineman to struggle. He certainly won't be the last. We've talked about this. If there was ever a position where I would expect a true freshman to struggle, offensive line. Offensive line. That's where I would expect a true freshman to struggle. And he is. But if you're having trouble with your left side, why not move your quarterback out? One of the things that blew me away against Texas was the lack of designed quarterback runs, especially when through the early portion of that game, your rushing attack was getting it however it wanted. 8 yards a pop here, 9 yards a pop here, 8 yards a pop here. Texas adjusted because they needed to. But Alabama never got Jalen Milroe involved. If he ran, it's because he scrambled. There was never any ability to put together a congruent game plan once they had something working. And that can't happen against Ole Miss. It cannot happen against Ole Miss. Now, I'm certainly not sitting here telling you, oh, if Bama runs Jalen Milroe against Texas, Bama wins. That's not my contention because Texas would have adjusted differently, and then we get into a whole other conversation. And because Texas won the game, I think it's only fair to carry over that analysis. Because if we're playing the what-if game, I'm always going to end on what we saw, which was Texas winning. So if I'm playing the what-if game and you're a Texas fan, don't think I'm playing it to rewrite history. I'm just playing it to say, oh, well, they didn't do this. That was a strength of the team. Texas took advantage. And I bring that to I don't want you thinking, oh, I'm saying if Jalen Milroe runs, because I don't like the what-if game. We've talked about this before. I don't like the what-if game. And that's why if I'm going to play it, and I hate playing it, the result of the game will still be the same. Right? That is what it is. JW, you're going to have to, I don't understand what this comment is in reference to. If you could give me a bit more to go off of right there. I don't understand. But yeah, I'll address that comment. I just don't understand. If I said something, let me know. But Alabama has the recipe for this. Run Jalen Milroe. If your offensive line is struggling on the left side, get him floating to his right so that he has time to look downfield and he's not in the pocket. And you're simplifying how much of the field he has to read. Once again, I'm not an offensive coordinator. I'm not a football coach. Far from it. These guys have forgotten more yesterday about college football than I could hope to learn. To quote Coach Prime, talking about Nick Saban, that he's forgot more about football than Coach Prime could hope to achieve. Well, these coaches, they've forgotten more about football than I could ever hope to know about football. But I do think it's fair to say, and I think, chat, you would agree with me, it is a head scratcher whenever we can look and say, okay, Alabama's offensive line is struggling. Are they calling screen passes, quick passes to get the ball out so that the opposing defense can't just tee off? Oh, no, they're not doing that? Well, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Are they asking their dual threat quarterback to stay in the pocket? They are, and the offensive line's not good? Well, that doesn't make much sense. Are they asking him to move out of the pocket and throw? They're not. Oh, 3 for 3. None of which makes sense to me. I'm not a football savant. I'm pretty dumb when it comes to football. But even I can look at that and go, some of these things just don't add up. That's got to change against Ole Miss. You know, I had a clip for Bleacher Report. I don't like to toot my own horn, but I'm as proud as this clip as any clip I've ever had taken. And it was as it's announced that Jalen Milroe won the job. I talked about how Jalen Milroe won that job without ever taking a snap, and I didn't even know it had officially been announced yet. This whole notion that he's a bad teammate, yeah, you can miss me with that. The whole sour grapes argument, you can miss me with that. I've been told several different reasons as to why he didn't play. I'm not going to say most of them. The one we were all told is that he didn't have a good attitude in practice. Like I said for Bleacher Report, and then I'm going to move past so we can talk about Colorado. You're going to have a hard time convincing me that the young man you just benched, the one player on that sideline that has a reason to sit on their hands and eat sour grapes, he's the one guy on that sideline with any sort of energy. He's the guy running up to Ty Simpson, congratulating Ty Simpson on Simpson's great play, knowing damn well that that great play, there's a universe where that great play just meant Jalen Milroe is no longer the starting quarterback for the University of Alabama. And still, he's congratulating him, knowing that might have just been his job. Jalen Milroe is the one congratulating him. Ladies and gentlemen, Jalen Milroe is the clear answer for Alabama's quarterback position because he was undeniable in that moment. And Nick Saban has wanted them to be undeniable. Jalen Milroe won the job without ever throwing a pass, without ever taking a snap, by being undeniable. Let's hit some comments and then move forward. Green says if Travis Hunter would have laid that hit, he'd have been a hero. I disagree stridently with this, Green. I disagree wholesale with this. I don't think it would have mattered who laid that hit. I think we'd still talk about it as a dirty hit. Now, I think there's something to the notion that, hey, because it was a team where so many eyes are thrust upon it, the result of that hit will be exponentially exacerbated, right? Because it's just a simple numbers game. If 100 people see something happen, you'll have 100 people talking about it. If 22 million people see something happen, you're going to have a larger percentage of the population talking about it. And right now, they're pulling views. So I think it's natural that when something happens with Colorado, it gets exacerbated. But it was a dirty hit, right? It was very clearly a dirty hit. And someone did a freeze frame of it and really broke it down. The ball had hit the ground about 4 or 5 yards in front of Travis Hunter, and the defensive back was going in a trajectory that would have had him not even hit Travis Hunter. The ball hits the ground. Hunter takes 3 steps. The DB keeps running and then changes his whole trajectory from going this way to shooting this way. That was, I'll put it like this. He didn't not mean to hit a man that didn't have a ball. Right? It would have been far less effort for him not to hit Travis Hunter than it would have been for him to hit Travis Hunter. Now, do I agree when people are saying this kid is just a dirty? No. It was a football play. I think it was a little dirty. I think it was to send a message, but I also think people are going way overboard. Let's end it there. Was it a play we want to see replicated? No. Period. Let's move forward. That's how I view it, right? I do agree with you, Green. I think that it's being talked about more just because Colorado's being talked about more. So I definitely think there's something to that argument, right? I think that if this happened to Xavier Worthy, it'd be talked about. If this happened to Andrell Anthony, Isaiah Bond, it'd be talked about, but maybe not to the degree of Travis Hunter, because Travis Hunter right now, let's be honest, I mean, he's that guy in college football. Everybody's talking about him. So not only did it happen to the team everybody's talking about, it happened to the player everybody's talking about. So of course it's going to be exponentially exacerbated. I do agree with you there. I think that's a completely fair and reasonable take. I think it was dirty, but if you're saying, hey, would we be talking about this the same way? I think there's something there, but I do still contend people would be talking about it saying it was a dirty hit. I just don't know that it would be something blowing up multiple days worth of social media, right? I think that's the effect of the hype Colorado has, which not saying it's not deserved. Oh no, Green, he doesn't need to be banned. I think Coach Prime, I think Coach Prime handled it beautifully in the press conference the other day, where he was saying like, hey, the kid made a mistake. It was a football play, right? Like he was doing it in the game of football. It was a bang, bang play. It was a little dirty. Coach Prime didn't say that. I'll say it. It was a little dirty, but let's not pile on the kid. Yeah. Zach, if it's after the whistle, then it's not a football move, because when the whistle is blown, a football move is to stop and walk back to the huddle. So I don't disagree with your overall point that an eye poke is not a football move, but at the point where you've already included in your sentence after a whistle, you've pretty much well taken down your own point by stating that you're right. Football moves do occur after a whistle. It's when they turn around and go back to the huddle. So I do agree with you, actually, because in a way you've kind of proved that it wasn't something that happens in that capacity. That CSU should be suspended for a while. Look, Neo, here's where I think about that. If we're going to suspend him, do it like it's a targeting call. That's it. That's it. Right? But even then, I just think that the way Coach Prime handled it is exactly the way we need to handle this. Let's just move on, right? It's football. We are making this a much bigger deal than it needs to be. Now, Zach, like I said, I do agree. The eye poke, which is why I singled the eye poke out. And the other day, I think I got a little bit misinterpreted. My point the other day was saying the eye poke is something you don't want to see, but all the other extracurricular activity instead, in terms of like pushing, shoving, that I don't care about. Nearly every game, not like that, Zach. It's been a while since I've seen a hit like that. Because like I said, sure, we can pull them, but that one was pretty bad. There's a freeze frame that I wish I could find and bring it in here. The kid, it would have been easier for him to not hit Travis Hunter. The ball hit about 5 yards in front of Travis Hunter. He could have completely missed Hunter by running forward. Instead, he kept running and then changed his trajectory multiple steps after he'd already seen the ball hit the ground to, instead of go this way, launch this way at Hunter. It was very clear what the intent was. I'm not saying he was trying to hurt him. I'm saying it was very clear they were trying to send a message of, we're big bad Colorado State. Which, why Colorado State's trying to send that message when y'all are a perennial laughingstock, I don't know. But that was very clearly the message. It was very clear, hey, we're going to do a little bit of a dirty play to send a message. Kind of like what they say in prison, you go up to the biggest, baddest dude, you punch him right in the face to establish. Well, that's what happened. They went to the biggest, baddest player on Colorado, and they hit him. I don't know why they did it, because it's Colorado State. It's not exactly a team that, but we'll see. I heard, dude, yeah, that's ridiculous. The kid doesn't need death threats. The kid doesn't need to, honestly, it shouldn't have been talked about to this point. We just need to acknowledge, don't do it again. That's, the ball was on the ground and you had to work much harder to do the hit than not do the hit. Just don't do it again. And let's leave it at that. That's the easiest way to do it. But let's fast forward, because Colorado they have a big game this weekend, guys. They have got a really, really big game. Everybody is going to be waiting, watching as they take on Oregon. And one of the things we've looked at is that Oregon, man, they're a complete team. They're a very complete team. And right now, Colorado does one thing exceptional, and that's their passing attack. Their passing attack is exceptional. They have had no semblance of a rushing attack, which worries me. Now, they've been able to basically establish a rushing attack through the quick passing game, right? But I don't know that that's enough. I don't know that you can have no rushing attack and get the rushing attack going through the quick passing game, right? Like, I think you can do that if your rushing attack just isn't there. That's when you can use the quick passing game. But when you have no rushing attack, I think it's hard to do that. I also think that when we look at Colorado's defensively, like, you can run the football on them, and Oregon's going to be a better team than anybody they've played. I think that if Travis Hunter isn't there, he's your best corner. He's your best secondary player. That's going to be a big hit. I am picking Oregon to win this game. Stink, thank you so much for the 20, my guy. He says, love the show type. Man, it's nothing without y'all. Thank you so much for the 20. Thank you so much for being in here on this Wednesday, spending your time with us talking college football. You really don't know how much it means. Thank you so much, Stink. That means a ton, man. Thank you. Chicken, thank you for the encouraging of the wiping of the feet. Means a ton. I have been someone that's been very high on Colorado. I think everybody here knows that. I'm not going to shy away from it. I was one of the people that whenever he was hired, whenever I saw what they were doing, I was one of the first people to be like, hey, I'm going to catch some flack for this, but Colorado is going to be better than people expect. Now, it turns out that became a mainstream narrative, right? that it turns out my position became a mainstream narrative, but for different reasons. When I hear the mainstream narrative as to why Colorado is going to be, it's not a narrative I completely agree with. Not saying I completely disagree with it, but I think there's nuance here that we need to understand. One, it's a vastly more talented team than Colorado was last year. Let's call a spade a spade. I mean, hell, if we just look at their offense, they're a 100% better team than last year, just if we took their offensive additions. That's true. That's true. But where I started to disagree with some of the notions out there, and I'm not saying Colorado can't win this game, because that's why sports are played. You play the game to see. Another reason why I'm not going to say Colorado can't win this game is because everybody said USF can't beat Alabama. And my goodness me, that game did not turn out the way we thought it did. Alabama won. Point proven, though, or point standing. Another reason why I just won't say it, because we've seen crazy things happen. But if you're saying, Ty, who do you think is going to win? I think Oregon's going to win. I think Oregon's going to win. And that's not because I think Colorado is a bad football team. But guys, you're talking about Dan Lanning, who's been there a year, who had a great foundation. He inherited a car that he could get in, press the push to start because he didn't need a key. Wasn't one of those cars he inherited. No, we're talking a modern era car he inherited where you push the button, put it in gear, and you go to Walmart. That's what Dan Lanning inherited. And he's done a great job with it. I think Dan Lanning has proved himself as a coach we need to keep our eyes on. It's going to be a fun coach to keep up with. Oregon's a fun team to keep up with. Let's be honest here. They always have been. If you're my age, you grew up waiting to see what uniform combinations they would release. That was a huge deal when I was in high school. But, ladies and gentlemen, Oregon is a team that is much further ahead of Colorado. And I'm not saying that to say anything negative towards Coach Prime. What Coach Prime has done there, I don't think anybody, aside from a few people, thought would be possible. And even myself, who thought Coach Prime is going to shock the world, I don't know if I would have told you with full conviction that they would be 3-0 heading into this point. I thought they'd be 2-1. I thought there was a possibility of 3-0, but I would have been honest and say I think the more likely answer is 2-1. Well, they're 3-0. They're 3-0. So they're a much better team than people think. I think as the year goes on, they're going to do better than people think. But do I think that they're in a position right now to beat Oregon? I don't. I don't. Because let's look at some ranks here real fast, right? If I look at this, Oregon is number 70 in rushing defense. They allow 127 yards a game. Now, that isn't great, but Colorado has not been able to generate a rushing attack. So the one part of Oregon's defense that you're like, okay, maybe we can take advantage of that, you're not able to generate a rushing attack. In fact, if I look and see where Colorado ranks right now in terms of a rushing attack, they are number 127 in the nation, averaging 61 yards on the ground. That's not going to get it done. That's not going to get it done. And if I look, right, what does Colorado do best? Okay, it's their passing offense. Where does their passing offense rank? Oh, well, their passing offense is number 2 in the nation. So, Ty, how can they win that matchup? Well, let's go check where Oregon's pass defense is, shall we? And Oregon's pass defense comes in as the number 15 unit in the nation. It's a good unit. But you want to know what stands out to me? When I start looking at this, yes, Colorado has got a great passing offense, number 2 in the nation, averaging 418 yards per game. That's incredible. Shadur has been unbelievable. Oregon is at number 5, averaging 363 yards per game. Oregon has got a better rushing attack. They've got a better rushing defense. Their passing attack isn't far behind the Colorado Buffaloes. And if I look at total defense, right, let's check out, or scoring defense. Let's check out scoring defense. If I'm looking at scoring defense, Oregon is tied for 31st. It's a defense that you can turn towards and think, okay, they can get something done. I just think when we look at this, Colorado has got one area of their team that is elite. Colorado is the number 102 scoring defense, tied with Purdue and Utah State, averaging 30.33 points per game being scored on them. One of the ways I go about evaluating games, guys, is I look at this almost like I would when I was back in college on moot court, figuring out how I was going to make my argument, right? What am I going to use as a case? I'd go through and I would line up everything. And I would say, where are my questions being answered? Oregon has a better pass defense. Oregon has a better rush defense. Oregon has a better total defense. Oregon's got a better rush attack as of right now. Colorado's got a better passing offense. Colorado's got the hype. I will say Colorado has momentum. That's not to say Oregon doesn't have momentum, because Oregon's coming into this game riding a high as well. But I think we can all agree the momentum with Colorado right now, it is palpable. At the very least, we can all agree on that. Momentum doesn't win you football games. Let's understand that. But they're feeling themselves. Oregon is the more complete team right now because Coach Prime inherited an old school Lamborghini Diablo. Beautiful vehicle in the beautiful Lamborghini orange. But he walked up to it, and ladies and gentlemen, it is just a frame. And by the way, come to find out, he owned the frame too. Because he had to bulldoze everything. I mean, Prime bulldozed the whole damn thing. And it's working. It is working. But this is the first weekend where I will be picking the team Colorado is playing to win the game. And it's not because of anything I think Colorado can't do. It's because of what I think Oregon can do. I think we will come out of this game thinking, man, Shedeur is continuously proving he's that guy. Because, guys, there's nothing you can take away from Shedeur thus far. He is playing unbelievable football. Let's hit some comments. We're going to get out of here. Chicken says, Ty, on this, think on this, Ty, Oregon's numbers are skewed. Very good point. Very, very good point. Very good point. I think that's very well received by blowing people out. Yeah, fair enough. Shedeur's like a shot caller, and he's pure magic. Pure magic. Pure magic. I think it's in Oregon because they've had back-to-back games in Colorado, so I think this one's at Eugene. Yes, it's at Eugene. See, you just got another possible Hall of Fame on staff. I haven't seen. Did they just make a new hire? Oh my God. Okay, well, yeah, we got to do a little bit of a caveat on this. Warren Sapp is now joining the Colorado staff. Hall of Famer Warren Sapp targets 2024 to join Deion Sanders' Colorado coaching staff. Wow. Wow. That's wild. That's incredible. Jeez. So let's talk about this. When you look at this staff, this is something Jay of Unfair Sports and I have talked about. Whenever we're talking what makes Colorado tick, there's a ton of different answers we can give. Shedeur Sanders has been automatic. He has been magic, as someone in chat just put it. Coach Prime has been magic as well, calling his shots and getting it done. But one of the things that has separated Colorado and allowed them to find the success they found early on, in my opinion, is this coaching staff. We've talked about this. time and time and time again that this was a coaching staff you needed to know. Whenever Prime was at JSU, they had an offense that was scoring. Well, that offensive coordinator is now the wide receiver coach. The offensive coordinator for Colorado, former Kent State head coach Sean Lewis. Defensive coordinator Charles Kelly comes from Alabama, where he was tabbed as one of the most elite recruiters in all of college football. Not to mention, you have former NFL coaches on staff as analysts, such as Mike Zimmer. And now Warren Sapp is interested in joining the Colorado football staff come 2024 after talking to the players. Do we realize what this means? We are now in a position where it's not just the media that is gravitating towards what we are seeing at Colorado. It is not just the players that are gravitating towards what we are seeing at Colorado. It is now high-level coaches gravitating towards what we're seeing out there at Colorado. So how Colorado's season goes this year, that's up for debate. That remains to be seen. But do you want to know what isn't up for debate anymore? And it hasn't been for a long time, yet people continually try and debate it. Not people here, because you guys are keyed in. Prime moves the needle. And if you're still fighting that notion, if you're still fighting the thought that Coach Prime has the ability to back up what he says, you're fighting a losing battle. Other great minds don't want to be surrounded by mediocrity. Great minds want to be surrounded by great minds. And right now, there looks to be a whole lot of great football minds that are intrigued by what we're seeing at Colorado. They're not interested in mediocrity. They're interested in building. And they're seeing a building being made. They're seeing a foundation being laid, a foundation that you can build upon. This right here just goes to prove whether you believe in Colorado or not, for whatever reason you may have. The most important people in the equation, because as fans, we're important, but we are not the most important people in the equation. Do you want to know who the most important people in the equation are? The recruits and the coaches that you can add into your staff. Well, guess what? Both of them are highly interested. And you know what that tells me? That tells me Coach Prime moves the needle. And whether you want to admit it or not, what's happening right now at Colorado, that's real. And it's happening right in front of our very eyes. Warren Sapp possibly joining that Colorado coaching staff would be huge. And it's something we've got to keep our eye on. Guys, we're going to get out of here on that. We will be back tomorrow, 10 o'clock Central Standard Time. Another episode of Through the Haze Friday. We're not doing our Through the Haze on Friday anymore because you can find me over at Bleacher Report hosting a show with Jay of Unfair Sports, Steven of Fanatics Perspective, and Nino of Nino Sports Corner, the college football roundtable where we pick all the biggest games from the weekend. Love to see you over there. Don't think I have any Bleacher Report streams coming up within the next few days. If I do, I'll let y'all know. Until next time, we'll see you. Steven, don't you dare apologize, my man. Don't you dare apologize. That was a great thing for you to bring to me. Thank you so much, because that was awesome. Don't you dare apologize, man. Never apologize for contributing in chat, because your contribution in chat added another layer to this stream. It added another layer of information for everybody in chat and including myself. Never apologize for adding in information, man. You've just helped us all learn. That's not something to apologize for. Guys, enjoy your day. Stay safe out there. It's storming here. Be good. We'll see you tomorrow. That's it. See ya.